So what we will do is, the structure is gonna work. We will have the clip play and then pause it and then make a comment and then take your comments. And I am assuming we won't be able to go through a whole video, but we will see. We will see how it goes. If we can't finish whole video, we will pick up where we left in coming live streams. But let's start. So the clip is taken from Islam Critics YouTube channel. I'll put the link. I can't remember if I put the link or not, but I will put that. Interview took place a couple of weeks ago between Islam Critic and Shady Nasser. So let's go to it and listen to it.
We noticed that at different times in history, we do have certain readings in the Quran that they were excluded from, what we call now the canon. So we call basically the first stage, what everyone is familiar with, the Uthmanic Codex. And this is the first canonization process where the readings or the codices of the companions of Muhammad, they were excluded based on the Codex of Uthman. So even though Uthman's attempt to limit the variants of the Quran to one codex, variant readings kept multiplying. And this is evident from the early works of grammar and exegesis that we have, that you have uncontrollable amount of variants that Muslims were using and circulating among themselves.
So let's stop here for a minute. But can I get sound check? Can everyone hear me? Daughter of Christ, can you say hi to us, and then we get to see if people can hear you.
Hello, can you hear us guys, Mia, Hatun, and the video? Please type in the chat. I'm looking now at the chat.
Yeah, the reason we are doing sound check is because apparently when we play the video, if you are commenting on the video, sound apparently doesn't come as loud as it's supposed to be. That's from the program. But if the sound is fine, we will continue.
Yeah, I've got yeses from the chat system.
Okay, so when we look at the history of according to traditional account, when we look at the history of the Quran, what we see is when the second Quran is being compiled, under the Uthman, according to not only Shady Nasser, but according to Islamic tradition, there were the variations in this Quran. And they wanted to get rid of it, and then they wanted to make one Quran without variations. One Quran without variations. So, and there were certain Qurans did not kind of survive, or certain Qurans were intentionally discredited.
Yes, and he says there's an variant readings started appearing. There was an uncontrollable, like a proliferation of variant readings. So more and more variant readings kept appearing. So that's something else I got, sister, as well.
Okay, so when we say variant reading, we are talking about different Arabic Qurans. Okay, that means name of the Quran is different. And then between those Qurans, there are textual variations, and even the chains, kind of like people who pass the Quran stuff, there are differences in that. Okay, so I think we use Daughter of Christ, if that's okay, we try to use the word different Arabic Qurans versus variant reading, because that's in Islamic tradition, it's just a recitation, there is nothing different. But that's not the issue. Issue is, as they say, variant reading. They are talking about different Quran, name of the Quran is different, and there are textual variations within the Qurans, and those Qurans are attributes to the different people.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Yeah, it makes sense.
So let's kind of continue.
The second canonization is what Ibn Mujahid did out of a corpus of, I don't want to say unlimited, but many readings that existed back then, probably as many as 50, as sources tell us. He chose 7 readings.
Okay, so we do have we do have the first canonization of the Quran under the Uthman, which is actually second Quran, because first Quran has been compiled under the Abu Bakr. But Uthman kind of tried to get rid of it, burned all the different Qurans, all the different writings, and then he tried to pull together one perfect Quran. Yet he wasn't that successful, because as he sent the Quran to different cities, there were differences in the written version of the Quran without dot. Okay, as in that time Quran was written without dots, there were different versions of the Quran without dots. So that was the from time of Uthman. He picked up and then he went with his version, and then we got the second official Quran.
Yeah, so he will speak about Osman in greater length later on. Ibn Mujahid is around 200 to 300 AH, which is the third to fourth.
300.
Yeah,
he died in 320.
He died 25. Yeah, after Muhammad.
After Hijrah, yeah.
After Hijrah, yeah. So he said that there were so many different Qurans, up to 50. So he reduced that 50 number to 7. Is that correct, sister?
I'm just going to show that in the, I think I did have that in the slide. Okay. Sorry, that's the Ahruf slide. That's the Ahruf slide. That's the, okay, let me just go back. Sorry, let me see if I can share the screen. Okay.
Okay, guys, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We can ask Qaloon. She's got the slides.
No, those are like my slides, bro. I'm not even sure if it's gonna match with, his information, but let's put them.
Oh, let's see what he says.
Yeah. So, when you look at the Islamic tradition, okay, so around 839 AD, people are talking about there are 25 different Arabic Qurans. Okay. And then we've got around 912 AD, people are talking about 50 different Arabic Qurans. Okay? 912. I don't know if people are able to see my screen or not, but anyway, I'll continue. And then we come around 935, okay? That's the time when Ibn Mujahid died. While there were lots of different Arabic Qurans were circulating, he picked 7 of them. And then we will get to hear actually people were very much upset that, oh, why we are limiting this, why we are limiting this, why we are limiting this. And then around 1397 AD, we will have individual comes and then tells us, actually, instead of 7 readings, let's make it 10 readings. That means, oh, there were lots of different Qurans. Someone picked up 7 different Qurans as the essentials. And now I'm going to make that 10 different official Qurans. And then, of course, those Qurans are going to give birth to their students. And then the Qurans we have is mainly from their students. And then we will get to hear around 1705, another individual is going to come and then say, okay, there are lots of Arabic Qurans are circulating around. Let's officialize it and then let's make it 14 readings, 14 different Arabic Qurans. Thought of Christ, anything to add on this?
Yeah, so what I've got from here is it was up to 50 Qurans, and then people came in to limit 7 to 10, and now there are 14.
Yeah.
There is a comment. It says Quran is defined as everything what Muhammad the Prophet recited.
According to who?
According to this gentleman in the chat called Isam L.
He's not a prophet. So according to whom? Who says that?
Yes, as you will see, Isam, people weren't sure what the Prophet recited, and sometimes they would even exclude something the Prophet recited. But we'll see. Stick around and listen.
So according to the Islamic tradition, we do know that we do not have the Quran of Muhammad according to Islamic tradition. According to most reliable individuals, Umar as well as Aisha, as well as Uthman, as well as most reliable person whom Muhammad passed the Quran, we know from them, actually we do not have the Quran of Uthman, Quran of Muhammad. Let alone today, we do not even have the Quran of Uthman. And maybe we will have time to look at some of the dates of those Qurans. They are very much late. And then someone turns up around 300 years after the death of Muhammad and then decides, yep, we do have lots of different Qurans. What are we gonna do is, let's pick which one do you wanna pick. Oh, do you want this one? Do you want this one? Do you want this one? And they just pick, I'm gonna go with 7 of them. When that takes place, just let me bring your attention to this. When that takes place, okay, Ibn Mujahid is not the one who claims to receive revelation from someone called Gabriel. When that happens, Ibn Mujahid is not the someone who had chit-chat with Muhammad and then get the confirmation. That never happened. That never happened. Man turns up and then says, yep, let's fix the problem because now there are different Qurans out there. Muhammad apparently never even saw those Qurans. And I can't remember if it's on the video, but in the interview, Shady Nasser expressed informations about the Ahruf, where Muslims come. That's how Quran reveals to Muhammad in 7 different ways. And Yasin Duton expressed, actually, we don't know. And Yasir Qadi expressed, actually, we don't know what Ahruf is, but still we get to hear from Muslims that's just different recitations or way to the Quran, all those kind of things. So pretty much messed up. But let me just continue, actually. Oh, sorry, Daughter of Christ, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, and sister, you mentioned Ibn Mujahid and others, the ones who actually picked the readings, the 7 readings. They just happened to be popular at the time and supported by the political powers. They had links to the state.
Yeah,
that's how the work got popular. In the interview, it says that it was actually who you are and how popular you are and who you know, why people actually picked up their work. It wasn't because they had links to Revelation or Muhammad or any such things.
Yeah. Essentials for us to remember, those of us who does the work of evangelist, is Muhammad never saw those Qurans which are being officialized by those individuals. Muhammad was long dead. There is nothing tells us from the Islamic tradition Gabriel came and then put the stamp on those Qurans. That's important for us to think. Like someone turns out of blue and pink, who has been chosen for the political purposes, to decide, let's pick what do we want. And if you look at, maybe we'll see, we might have time to look at that. Like on the different Qurans, you would say, okay, actually it would be wiser if people choose the Warsh Quran instead of Hafs Quran. But we will see what we have. Let me get rid of this page. Let me go back to oh yeah, I can see him. Okay, let's continue with the video.
So, and also in Ibn Mujahid's system, when he chose the 7 readings, each reading was not unique. So you can see also there are differences within one reading. So we find many readings in Ibn Mujahid that people stopped reciting today, and even stopped reciting 300 years, after him. He also disagrees, I think 7 or 8 times with the canonical readings themselves. He also has a lot of, I think I counted 64 transmission errors in his book, where he said that this transmission is wrong, this is wrong, it should be this way, it should be that way. Around 150 years later on, In
Okay, let's stop here. So this guy who turns out of pink or out of blue and then decides, okay, there are lots of Qurans, let's make some officials, and then decides to make 7 of them official. Even there are variations within those Qurans, and soon after he made them official within a couple of 100 years, no one bothered with his reading. People still follow the reading the Qurans they were following. And of course that wasn't enough. Even there were disagreements, even though he was disagreeing with those Qurans whom he chose. I think
He
that's
counted
wonderful.
64 errors he
Yeah.
counted.
Yeah.
And that's with the canonical reading. That's with the Quran that everybody had agreed on. As far as I can understand at the time, he disagreed with sort of the reading that people had agreed on, and he counted 64 errors. And some of the reading, like he says, even in one reading, in one in one Quran, there will be differences as well within it, because it would be transmitted by different students. So he would also see those differences. Is that correct, sister? Am I understanding correctly?
Yes, and summary of that would be, even though people were intentional to finish the problem and then try to make one Quran that everyone agrees, was 7 different Qurans, and then soon after that it just again messed up. So that already stands against, there is one perfect Quran which has been preserved perfectly, dot by dot, letter by letter, sound by sound, word by word. According to whom? According to the Islamic scholars. Not according to us, but according to Islamic scholars. People used to state those things while back, but now the pressure is coming to the Muslims, and Muslims are simply speaking out about it. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So none of these scholars or readers, none of them were talking about one letter by letter, dot by dot,
Yeah.
sound by sound. This is a new thing, right?
That's been like since Muslim missionaries actively stepped into the world. Yeah.
Okay. So what you'd expect is closer to Muhammad's time. You'd expect less Qurans, like one Quran and then more Qurans to come after. But actually, there were so many Qurans to start with that they were trying to limit down.
Yeah, if you compare that like with the biblical manuscripts, so what we have is in early stage of Christian history, so we've got only few manuscripts. As the time goes on, our manuscripts are getting extended and extended. Like it's kind of, if you think the triangle is like upside down, versus when you think from the Islamic perspective, in the beginning they start with like very much different Qurans. As the time goes on, and then that kind of reduce and come to one Quran. And that's gonna take place in 1924.
Yeah, which is not that long ago at all, really.
Yeah, that's like clearly older than us, but not much older than others.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Let's follow. Yeah. Sorry.
In North Africa and Muslim Spain back then. So we have Abu Amr al-Dani and al-Shatibi, both of them. They were scholars of Qira'at, and they were mainly responsible for limiting those different variations or different students and limiting them into 2 only. So people dislike the fact that you are limiting them to a canon. Why are you limiting?
So you do so they pick those Qurans, okay, and those Qurans are being taught by the teachers to the students, and now it's gonna be limited to 2 students. So one teacher has 2 students. Actually, let me see. If I have I used to have mind map for that. Okay. Okay, I do have old mind map here. Let me see if we can see that on the screen. So we have the teacher, okay, one teacher, and then one teacher had actually many students, but that has been reduced to one teacher has two students. Like actually not like they didn't kind of reduce the students, but they reduced the they reduced the Qurans can be like more circulated. So they picked two students for one teacher. And then you can see the chart in here. So this is the list of over 37 different Qurans. Okay. Let me kind of, Thought of Christ, did you want to make any comments so far? Sorry, that was very short thing I wanted to kind of point out.
Yeah, so for people who want to know, the two people he mentioned, Dani and Shatibi, they came later in history. So Dani is around, he died 440 in Hijrah, and Shatibi came 100 years after. They were still trying to limit the number of Qurans around. And people, like he said, people didn't like it. They wanted the different variant readings. They wanted the different Qurans around. They're saying, why are you limiting us?
Yeah, that's what we are going to hear.
Which is incredible. You'd think that they'd want to have one standard Quran, but people didn't want. People loved their own different Qurans.
Okay, let's. Okay, something went wrong in here, so we will be listening from the beginning. Sorry, when I share the screen, something went wrong. Okay, so we will be listening from the beginning.
We noticed
Abbas
that
keeps
at
asking the same
different times
question he's asked before.
Sorry?
Abbas asking the same question that he keeps asking you for. No, tell me where it says in the Islam no one can ever make a false copy of the Quran.
Oh, well. Abbas has no right to speak on this topic in the intention of he hasn't give us the reference for Suyuti yet. So
Yeah.
first he has to fix that. He said, this individual says Suyuti say that. We ask him to give us the reference. What he sent us was he gave us something the author of the book says. We checked it. It is not there. So we are still waiting from Abbas, Mr. Abbas, Suyuti reference. So first, fix your problems in your house and then be kind and then come to the next question. But I don't think we will kind of make you to move forward until you give us the proper reference. Otherwise, it all proves to us that your Muslim scholars are intentionally lying to you.
Yeah, that's the rule. And so, yeah, I'm not going to respond since that's what you said, sister.
Okay.
Reference first.
Yeah. I hope you weren't thinking to respond.
No, I don't want to be fired.
Okay, let's go with the video.
We do have certain readings in the Quran that they were excluded from, what we call now the canon. So we call basically the first stage what everyone is familiar with, the Uthmanic Codex. And this is the first canonization process where the readings or the codices of the companions of Muhammad, they were excluded based on the Codex of Uthman. So even though Uthman's attempt to limit the variants of the Quran to one codex, variant readings kept multiplying. And this is evident from the early works of grammar and exegesis that we have, that you have uncontrollable amount of variants that Muslims were using and circulating among themselves. So the second canonization is what Ibn Mujahid did out of a corpus of, I don't want to say unlimited, but many readings that existed back then, probably as many as 50, as sources tell us. He chose 7 readings. And also in Ibn Mujahid's system, when he chose the 7 readings, each reading was not unique. So you can see also there are differences within one reading. So we find many readings in Ibn Mujahid that people stopped reciting today, and even stopped reciting 300 years, after him. He also disagrees, I think 7 or 8 times with the canonical readings themselves. He also has a lot of, I think I counted 64 transmission errors in his book, where he said that this transmission is wrong, this is wrong, it should be this way, it should be that way. Around 150 years later on, in North Africa and Muslim Spain back then, so we have Abu Amr al-Dani and al-Shatibi, both of them, they were scholars of Qira'at, and they were mainly responsible for limiting those different variations or different students and limiting them into two only. So people dislike the fact that you are limiting them to a canon. Why are you limiting us to two per one, i.e. 14 transmissions? And we have more readings, we have more variations. 300-400 years later, Ibn al-Jazari in the 9th century Hijri, Islamic calendar, so that would be around the 1400s, he came and added 3 more readings to those 7 by Ibn Mujahid. So that's the 4th period where really the system of 10 readings, or 10 canonical readings, what we call them. And then what I call the 5th canonization, it's the 1923-1924 Cairo edition of the Quran, based on Hafs and Asim. Most Muslims became familiar with that variety, mainly due to the publication, of that codex or that, Mus'haf in Cairo. Even though we have, of course, other editions from other readers, but most people are familiar still, even until today, familiar with that variety.
So, history of the canonization of the Quran. So far, what we have is first Quran, which has been compiled under the Abu Bakr, is not counted. Second Quran, which has been compiled under the Abu Bakr, is officialized first canonization of the Quran, because there were lots of different Qurans. There were lots of different Qurans. And then within 300 years after that, we do have an individual who comes and then someone who never has revelation from Allah, never communicates with Gabriel, never have a chance to get to see Muhammad, decides, while there are lots of different Arabic Qurans, let's go with 7 of them. And people are not happy about it because it's been limited, and then those 7 people can have only 2 students, and people are not again happy about it. And then couple of hundred years after that, we have another person comes who never gets revelation from Allah, never speaks to Gabriel or hears from Gabriel, never get to see Muhammad, never get to see Ibn Mujahid, decides, okay, let's make it 10 different Arabic Qurans as official. And then around 1700s, we will have 14 different Arabic Qurans are being made official. 1924 comes, and then we get to have one perfect Arabic Quran, which has been made official.
Yeah, and then he says, sister, which is interesting to me, most Muslims now are only familiar with the Hafs, the ones that they have in their hands, because of that publication in 1924. That's why modern Muslims now are not aware of the different Arabic Qurans.
Yeah, so we did have a session actually looking at the history of looking at the Quran, which has been canonized in 1924, and then we looked at the reasons, and then we looked at the second, like, it's not only 1924, something happens in 1930s, and then something happens in 1980s. We did have a session on that. You can watch if you haven't watched that. Daughter of Christ.
Yes, sister.
When you were Muslim, how many different Arabic Qurans did you know about?
I just knew the Hafs and Warsh.
That's it?
Qurans. That's all I knew. And I never actually held a Warsh Quran in my hand. I just heard the name.
Yeah.
The only Quran I ever saw, I ever held in my hand was Hafs Quran. And then, sister, when I got to know you and I saw the others, I was just stood there in shock when I opened these Qurans and saw the differences in them. It's almost like, when they teach you the Quran, we spend hours to the letter. And if I get one letter wrong, you get to talk, go back and start again. You call this a recitation, stick to the letter. And now I find there were different words, different ayahs, different everything, even surahs that are different. And it's just, I was shocked.
So people are not learning those things in the madrasas, in the mosques. You will meet with people who actually specialized on this, but it is on their level. And remember, Yasir Qadi expressed, actually, we don't need to share this information. But now they are being forced to talk about it. Simply in their mind is, oh, it's all about recitation. Even like I met with individuals who could tell me, oh, let me recite you other recitation. But they didn't think clearly, actually, the other recitation they are reciting, it has the different meaning. It's not only how you pronounce it, but it does affect the meaning. Therefore, a couple of months ago, Muslims thought, oh, let's put together 10 different Arabic book of the 10 different Arabic Qurans. So in that occasion, Fadil Suleiman, who is the author of the book, he did not go with Ibn Mujahid's 7 different Arabic Qurans, but he chose to go with 10 different Arabic Qurans. And then, of course, these 10 different Arabic Qurans has the students of 2, minimum of 2, and then that makes it 30 different Arabic Qurans published, which change the meaning of the words. Did you have anything to add, or shall we move on, sister?
I just wish they would teach us, or they would have taught us as Muslims, the history of the Quran. This book that they hold at such high value, but they hide the history of this book. And like Yasir Qadi said, it's not wise for this information to be out there.
Yeah.
So go on.
Why? Because there are holes in the narrative.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's continue.
Yeah.
How do we understand this concept of tawatur vis-a-vis qira'at or variant readings when many accounts from the classical sources do not agree with this concept of tawatur? In the early period, Muslims did not talk about this concept of tawatur, and it's very evident that the variant readings were local. So people in Damascus were transmitting things different, from people of Kufa or people from Mecca and Medina, and the reading or the variant reading was a local thing rather than a widely transmitted system that every single Muslim or even every single scholar knew of. If you don't have variant reading, you can't read the Quran. It's as simple as this. It's just you need the vowels and you need diacritics in order to read it.
Okay, did we all heard what it's been said?
If you don't have variant readings, you can't read the Quran. The Quran that our Muslims are reading today, sister, where are their variant other readings that they are using to read the Quran?
And have you also picked up other things?
Yeah, local. It's mainly local.
Yeah, so people in Kufa has their own versions of the Quran. People in Damascus have their own versions of the Quran. People in Medina, they have got their own versions of the Quran. Depend where you live, you've got your own version of the Quran.
And that makes sense why people didn't want to be limited. There's patriotic. Why should we leave the Quran of our city? This is the Quran of Medina. This is the Quran of Mecca. Feel proud of it. And you're trying to force on us a one standard one. Why? Also, did you notice what he said, sister? That mutawatir that Muslims love to talk about?
Yeah.
What is mutawatir, sister, for people who don't know in the chat?
So that's supposed to be like chains are taking you back to Muhammad.
Yeah, so Muslims use that. Oh, you need a mutawatir chain, a great chain of narration going back. And that's what they stand on. This is the evidence that the Quran is preserved. But what did Dr. Shady say? There was no such thing as this concept in early Islam.
Yeah, actually, let me see if I can get that work to be shown. So what happens is when you tell Muslims that actually your Quran messed up, when you look at the manuscripts, basic quick answer is gonna come is, we've got these beautiful multiple chains of the Quran takes us back to Muhammad. Person A passed to B, C, D, E, F, and then of course B passes to lots of different people. Person C passes to lots of different people, and then you get whole list. But when you look at the earliest manuscripts, none of the earliest manuscripts have any of those names in it. None of the earliest manuscripts, let alone when you talk about the Quran of Hafs, all those kind of things, they all like, even if you think about basic Hafs Quran, okay, that is the Quran which has been officialized in 1924. Even in that chain, so you've got lots of those bunch of names. This person took it from this person took it from this, and then it's all went on. But in those names, you've got people, according to Islamic tradition, they were intentionally and actively were disagreeing with one another when it come to the Quran. Ibn Masud's Quran was different than Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran. Umar's Quran was different than Zayd bin Thabit's Quran. Zayd bin Thabit's Quran was different than others. So those are just names. And yet Muslims can simply say, oh, because we've got these millions of names, and therefore we should be able to trust the Quran. We've got, like, if you get rid of all the manuscripts, then just from the recitations, because it comes from the chain to chain, we can simply put together Quran. That's the kind of idea. But it is, I don't know, worse than like Chinese whispering game.
Yeah, and it wasn't something that the early Muslims cared about or even knew. This concept came later on in Islamic history.
Yeah, we don't have like any earliest manuscripts kind of gives us the names. Those names come to the history very much late.
Abbas is still pushing it. He says he gave a reference about Al-Sulami. Abbas, Abu Abdurrahman al-Sulami read a different Quran according to Durr al-Mansur Basiyuti, volume 15, page 814 to 815. He read something called Dua al-Qunut, and he put it in the Quran. He claimed it was from Muhammad when it wasn't. So if you're going to go with that person, he read a different Quran, at best. Don't embarrass yourself. Go check that reference if you can, with the Arabic that you have, if you have it. Go on, sister.
So I'm just trying to, because couple of years back, I made this list of chains. I'm just trying to find if I can see that. Oh, it's gonna be very small. But let's see. How do I make this big? Okay, so let me take you an example. Okay, anyone sees my screen? So this is, so first part is the Hafs Quran, okay? Names in the Hafs Quran. So I've got these 37 different Arabic Qurans, and beginning of each Quran, you've got these wonderful names, okay? It tells you this Quran has been taken from this person, from this person, from this person, from this person. So here are the names. Let's start from the kind of so it come to us, okay? So this is the Hafs Quran. Hafs Quran is from Hafs ibn Sulaiman, okay? Hafs ibn Sulaiman took the Quran from Abu Bakr Asim ibn Abi al-Najud al-Asdi al-Kufi, okay? And then this person takes the Quran from Abu Abdurrahim ibn Habib al-Sulmi. Ignore my pronunciation for Arabic. As you can see, I can't even pronounce things in English. But those are the names, okay? And then this person takes the Quran from Uthman ibn Affan, Ali, Zayd, and Ubay bin Ka'b. So those 4 people apparently takes the Quran from Muhammad. And 4 people passed this Quran to so-called Abu Abdurrahman Abdullah ibn Habib al-Sulmi. But here's the problem. The line which has those Uthman's name, Zayd's name, Ubay bin Ka'b's name, those people were strongly disagreed with one another regarding what is the right Quran. They were strongly disagreeing, and even if you look at the timelines, there are gaps between timelines.
So hold on, if they're disagreeing, then how can they be part of the same chain? I thought the same chain is transmitting one thing and everybody agrees.
Yeah, this is the sister. Don't be racist. This is the miracle of Islam.
I'm just trying to understand. How can there be one chain giving you one thing at the end when they're all disagreeing in the middle of the chain?
I know, not in the, even like in the beginning of the chain. Beginning of the chain, they already disagrees, okay? And then you go down, okay? And then you've got another group of names, okay? And those people were disagreeing, and they were not even seen. Some of those people are not even seen as the trustworthy. And even if you look at their lifestyle, like Zayd bin Thabit was apparently very much young, comparing that Ibn Masud. But in somehow, they get the chains and then they take part in this whole Quran. And remember, another essential is, Hafs was identified as not reliable person. Therefore, they didn't even put Hafs in Hafs narrations in Hadith.
So
he took people's book and he never returned people's book. So that's identified as like, you take people's book and you never return that. That's kind of identified as like stealing. According to Islam, your hands to be chopped off. But what happens? Miracle happens. They give you place in the chains of Quran.
So wait, this Hafs person was not trustworthy enough to transmit the hadith.
Yeah.
They didn't trust him with the hadith, but they trust him with the Quran.
Yeah, with the word of Allah.
Muslims, they don't trust this man to transmit hadith, but you trust him with the Quran you have in your hand now.
Yeah, and Quran is the one Muslims put their eternity on. Just a side note. It's just a small side note. Okay.
And the chain of narration that you showed, sister, this is Islam's biggest trustworthy concept.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
like I went through a couple of years ago, I went through all the names in the Qurans because they are written in the beginning of the Quran, which, let me express again, they were not there in 7th century, in 8th century, in 9th century. They were not there. Even in 10th century, they were not there in the beginning of the Quran. But what happens is, as it goes on, Muslims see, yep, nights, problems are coming, let's fix it. This is the way we fix it. It's a very clever idea. We got this bunch of names, and then we put them on the list. Wonderful. I see that's like, just when Muslim says Quran is miracle, this is how it, like, how miracle is. Even like I remember Muslim missionaries at Speaker's Corner brought this big chart saying, here is we've got all the names, but they never looked at those names. Like I studied them a couple of years ago. There is a gap in the time in their life, and you cannot even find basic informations on the certain people, first of all, let alone some of them are so young. It's so like pretty much messed up. But and even like I can't remember if I have the slide, but even there is like individuals simply talking about, yeah, they are just doing additions to the chains. It's just double miracle. This is miracle. This is very much miracle.
Yeah, we've got someone put up the Hafs reference in Arabic. Thank you, brother.
You mean Hafs
yeah,
is Hafs is the stealer and liar?
Yeah, and he used to plagiarize from people's books. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got them translated English as well. But still, like, quick Muslim response to that is, yeah, because he couldn't remember the hadith. Sorry, because he wasn't good with the hadith, but that doesn't make him not good with the Quran. So in somehow, the book which affects your eternity, you put your trust to someone whom you identified as the liar and stealer, and then without any shame they come and critique the author of the Christian scripture and even individuals in the Christian scripture. But the essential difference is when, like, it's like very quick response when Muslim says, oh, we don't know anything about this person, or this person was a liar or murderer. For example, Paul, he watched disciples of Jesus to be persecuted, and therefore Muslims do not trust Paul, but they are quite happy to put their trust on someone who was lying as well as someone who was stealing other people's things, editing things.
Hold on. But Paul, when he was persecuting the Christians, he wasn't a Christian yet. Yeah. But Hafs was a Muslim.
Yeah.
He was a Muslim when he was a Muslim scholar, when he was lying and stealing.
Other thing is also, it shows how our glorious gospel has power to change from murderer to lover of Lord Jesus Christ. That is the power of our glorious gospel. A persecutor becomes persecuted. A murderer becomes the lover of Lord Jesus Christ and gets murdered. So there is something in the power of our gospel, change the life of individuals and transforms them. Yet that's not in Islam, but in somehow people still look up to these names, and then they are just like all fall in love with those names, who are making them to get to hell quicker.
Abbas is asking, Hatun, provide evidence that Uthman and Ubay ibn Ka'b and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud disagree. How can such a big apologist not know Islamic history? It's like even like little kids in primary school in the Arab world, they know this history. Do they not teach them? Why are you asking us for proof?
If they agreed, why do we have 114 chapters in the Quran, not 116 or 111? If they agreed with one another, can you tell me what happened to hips of Masud?
Yeah, there are stories about how they disagreed. Read your Islamic history, and if you want, just stay and watch, and Dr. Shady Nasser will talk about some of these stories.
Yeah, even Muslim missionaries, just ask them, ask for help.
I can't believe this is not this is your job as an apologist. It's like asking you, sister, who's Paul?
Like Abbas knows about this because I brought this lots of times to Speaker's Corner. So people just,
so if you do
people
find
wants
evidence,
to practice, people wants to practice to be a half to Hafs, have to be Hafs.
So if you see evidence, will you leave Islam, Abbas? Is that what you need? Or will you just find another way to try and abrogate this?
No, he's gonna say it's not in the Quran. That's what he's gonna do. But
so why are you asking in the first place?
Okay, let's get on.
Let's move on.
Let's move on, because my beauty time sleep is coming.
There's you can't read the Quran using your own opinion, and that's in the Islamic tradition. You have to rely on how your master taught it and how his master taught it. So you can't just do textual criticism. You can, of course, but you may not within the tradition. So there's a difference between someone who is, who has a manuscript and say, okay, I'm going to do textual criticism. I'm going to read the Quran on my own. And some scholars did that, back in the days. But of course, they were reprimanded. So this is a little bit problematic from the sense of documentation. We don't have enough documentation from the early period, and we don't know how much writing and orality were intertwined back then. And I'm talking here 8th century. Okay, there was a time when the Quran was codified during the time of Uthman, when orality lost to written transmission.
Did you hear that?
Orality lost. Wow. What happened to the oral tradition that is so amazing?
Oral tradition was so perfect that oral tradition was causing people to call one another kafir, disbelievers. Therefore, they went to written tradition.
I thought people's memories were back then better than our memories now.
No, that's on the movies and on Islamic tradition, not in reality.
Okay.
And other thing, just quick attention. This is something Professor Yasin Dutun agrees. Remember, he already told Muslim missionaries of the Speaker's Corner where he was teaching them. He said, actually, we don't have much things to put things together. It is all very much messed up. And if anyone takes this is another attention. If anyone takes the Quranic Musaf from 7th century or from 8th century without any dots, and then they kind of gives you the image, yeah, they can read it exactly with today's Quran. Those of you who kind of follows the Speaker's Corner videos, I am sure you noticed there are Muslim missionaries does that. Did you hear what?
Yeah, they were you can't do that yourself.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Am I allowed to say the name?
Sure.
Am I allowed to say the name of who did that? Adnan Rashid got a manuscript and start reading it on his own.
Yeah, like he's pretending, this is exactly the same without dots. And he has the razm, even razm was different. And then he was just like, look, it's exactly the same. He was simply criticizing Yasser Qadi for not being able to bring up the Birmingham manuscripts when he was asked, which Quran would you write in the empty page?
But now Dr. Shady Nasser, he's saying if you try to do that,
you can't do that.
You can't do that. You can't do that. Yeah, you need a teacher basically, and people did try to do that before and they were told off.
Yeah, and other thing is you cannot do that because you need dots to be able to do that. You need dots to be able to do that.
So you can't just pick up a manuscript and start reading it without dots or marks, which didn't exist back in the day.
Miracles. Don't you love miracles?
It's just messed up.
Let's call it like miracle of miracle.
What I mean by that is that Muslim scholars all agreed that regardless of your memory, regardless of how you memorize the Quran, you cannot deviate from the Uthmanic Codex.
Muslim scholars all agreed. It goes back to Uthmanic Musaf.
So memory doesn't matter, oral tradition doesn't matter.
Yeah, and Uthmanic Musaf, of course, the miracle of everything, without any dots, without any
diacritical marks.
Any Quraysh dialect, without any Quraysh dialect. It is just miracle by itself.
Amazing.
Yep, world of miracle.
So even those certain readers, they were sure of how they memorized the Quran through other channels. And, they were saying that I have a good chain of transmission. I studied with, X and, Y and Z, people. Muslim scholars post-Ottomanic period, they didn't care. As long as you are deviating from the text, we are not going to accept your reading.
So even if you give those names, okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, I learned my Quran from that. A is Sheikh, B is Sheikh, C is Sheikh, D is Sheikh. They are all Sheikh, they are all expert. That doesn't matter. Unless it has to come from the fitting into Quran Uthman put together. Yet there are many scripts which doesn't fit. There are many scripts which doesn't fit. So those oral tradition messed up. Who cares about the oral tradition? It is from the written tradition.
Yeah, oral, and even chain of narration doesn't matter here either if it's different from the Osman thing.
Yep. And daughter of Christ, can you remind me, when was the time when Uthman had a chit chat with Angel Gabriel? When was the time Uthman met with Allah? Or when was the time Muhammad stamped on the Quran which Uthman put together?
He didn't. He
Are
did
you
that
sure?
just by himself. And actually, a lot of the companions of Muhammad went against him because he's just started doing things his way. He just, they said to him, well, Muhammad didn't tell us to collect the Quran into one when he was alive. So what gives you the authority? And he had a big job to convince them to do it. And we'll hear later what happened. People fought with each other.
Yeah, and remember, they waited Hafsa to die so they can burn Hafsa's Quran as well. So like that was the best strategy. So we burn everything which disagrees with us.
Yep.
Let's go for it. Continue.
When someone tells you, well, the Quran was orally transmitted regardless of the rasm, regardless of the Uthmanic consonantal text, that's not accurate. There's no such thing as only oral transmission.
Wow, you should take this to Dawa Gang's Speakers Corner system.
They know about this, sister, therefore they don't want to talk about it. So what they do is they try to deplatform you.
No such thing as oral tradition. No such thing as oral tradition. You have to go back to the text of Uthman, which is what you're trying to do, sister. But they're going against you.
They're going against their own Islamic tradition. It's becoming like more kind of world of apostasy. And therefore, because he's making those statements from Islamic sources, therefore Muslim scholars and professors and even Muslim missionaries now identifying Shady Nasser as Dr. Shady Nasser as, oh, he's causing fitna. We need to come up with the good responses.
Dr. Shady Nasser is he went to Harvard University. He wrote many journals. He's got PhDs from Harvard on Arabic literature and Islamic studies.
Yeah,
he's extremely well learned.
In the mind of Muslim, that makes him like minus credit.
And everything he says actually agrees with Islamic sources themselves and actually with logic. If you think about it, oral tradition, if you try and bring this concept now, people will laugh at you. Things need to be written down.
Yeah.
And even when your sheikh is checking your memorization of the Quran, if you go to masjid, he will have a written Quran in front of him to check against what you're saying. You need the written text. That's just normal. Has been the normal human rule since the beginning of time. This oral tradition nonsense is a silly argument.
Other thing is, remember, because of the claims he's making, Professor Yasin Dutton is calling him, he is the one who is causing fitna.
Which is a dangerous thing. People who cause fitna, corruption in the land, you know what the punishment is in Islam, right?
533.
It's kind of
hands. chop their hands and feet, crucify them.
It's a veiled threat against. I hope that's not what they mean. Definitely a veiled threat there. Calling these names, it's the same thing again, sister. When someone comes out with the truth, people start attacking their character.
No. Let's listen a little bit more, and then probably we will stop very soon.
You have to oral transmission based on the text. So there are even transmissions on behalf of the canonical readers, which were also classified as shawaz, as irregular, not accepted. There are also readings attributed to the Prophet himself. We have a category in Qira'at, it's called the readings of the Prophet, okay? And there are, 3 or 4 books even written on that in Arabic. Even though we do have accounts that go back to the Prophet saying that he read this word as such, this word was also categorized as irregular or shawaz. It's just like they didn't care. As long as the readings deviate from the Uthmanic Codex, we will consider them to be irregular or shawaz. Even though we know that the Prophet might have read as such, and we also know that the other companions might have read as such. However, the Codex of Uthman abrogated all other codices, abrogated all other readings, and we are going to stick with that. We also have, information from Iraq, from Kufa, that people kept reading according to the codices, let's say, of Ibn Mas'ud, even 150 years after Uthman. So it's uncontrollable in a sense. People were.
Again, amazing. Readings of the Prophet were excluded.
Yeah, and he talks about irregular readings, which means like people were reading differently, and then he even talks about people are approximately 150 years after Uthman puts the Quran together, they are reading different Qurans. And he talks about do not ever, never, ever, never, ever, never trust oral tradition, and do not ever, never, ever, 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 and ever trust Muhammad's reading or Muhammad's recitation. Because why? Man called Uthman comes and then with his Musaf, he abrogates it. So I thought abrogation was only coming from Allah, but now we get to hear Uthman contributes how all of the word of Allah can be abrogated under the Uthman. Don't you love it?
Uthman abrogated some of the readings of his own prophet in his codex.
All of it, sister.
It's amazing that they would say the readings of the Prophet Muhammad are irregular, shawaz. I thought irregular is on the outskirts, what's wrong. His readings, Muhammad's readings, should be basic, and everything else should be shawaz or irregular. But they made Muhammad's readings themselves irregular, favoring Uthman, who abrogated everything before. I really hope Muslims are listening to this.
Actually, Muslims are listening this, but it seems they've got the urine of Satan in their ears, because all they are hearing is, we need to find ways to question the Bible because we cannot defend our Quran. Now, Muslims are not helping us to defend our Quran. Muslim scholars are not helping us to defend our Quran. What we do is, we need to put all the heads together, and then we've got to attack the Bible, which Allah, Muhammad, and Quran so much fall in love. That's what happens. That's what's happening in the chat. I saw just a comment. Someone was simply experiencing that.
Yeah, well, that person, when you stand in front of God on Day of Judgment, he won't ask you about the Bible. He'll ask you, why did you follow this when you knew about all of the holes? What will you say to him? If you say, oh, but the Bible said, guess what? It's not going to work. You'll go going straight to hell. I'm sorry, man. Repent.
Yeah, there is Islam critic is on the chat. Peace of Christ be with you, brothers. Sorry, we are using your interview.
Yeah, thank you for the interview, brother. God bless you.
Yes, thank you for the interview.
Very enlightening.
Thank you for the interview, which helps us to find new arguments on our engagement with Muslims. So therefore we are grateful for that. And yeah, thought of Christ, do you want to summarize for us?
Yeah, we
So
had
we've done approximate half of the, not even half, less than half of the kind of clip which we taken from Islam Critic.
Yeah,
And
so
then
Islam Critique,
we will follow that up. But yeah, I think we kind of try to wrap up. If there are questions, we can take it from the chat, but let's Thought of Christ summarize for us how perfect Quran being perfectly preserved, and even half Quran perfectly being abrogated, but even that abrogation failed in succession in Kufa. Thought of Christ.
yes, sister. So this is an interview our brother Islam Critique interviewed Dr. Shady Nasser about the canonization of the Quran. This is this word which means how the Quran was compiled and the process. And he starts with the first, which was when Uthman tried to basically limit the differences that the Muslims had on the Quran. And he did that. We know that he later on burned the mushafs of the companions. So that was the first canonization. The second was by someone called Ibn Mujahid, who came around 200 years later. And he, at the time, there were at least 50 different Qurans that we know of, probably more actually from Muslim tradition. And he tried to limit it to 7. He limited to 7. Two people came after him called Adani and Ash-Shatibi 100 years after him, and then 100 years after again. And they tried to limit again. And he told us that there was a lot of resistance against the limiting of the different variants because people wanted to have their Qurans. And those Qurans were according to geography, according to local areas. So Kufa had their own Quran, Mecca had their own Quran, Medina had their own Quran, and they didn't want to let go of those Qurans, and they didn't want to be limited. But those people who limited those readings had political power. They were linked to the state, and they kept standardizing the Quran. And then later on, we have the 1924 Quran. By that time, we've got 10 readings. 3 more readings were added, and then another 4 readings added. So up to the present day, we have 14 different readings. But most Muslims, vast majority, only know the Hafs Quran, which was transmitted down by Hafs, who was known to be a liar and a thief and a plagiarist, and whose hadiths were not trusted. He also talked about tawatur, and that is that it was a later concept. And also, one of the takeaway is there's no such thing as oral tradition. Everything is based on the text, the Uthmani text in particular.
And even Muhammad text, sorry, even Uthman's text can abrogate Muhammad's text.
Yeah. He talked a little bit about the unusual readings called the Shawaz, which actually included some of the readings of Muhammad himself, but they were abrogated by Uthman.
Yeah. So there are some different Qurans out there. Even though people actively and intentionally try to make it one perfect Quran, there are different Arabic Qurans, and those different Arabic Qurans contains 93,264 variations, textual variations within them. And it hasn't finished yet. And most of those Qurans has miracle names which takes people back to Muhammad. People who were disagreeing regarding the Muhammad's Quran. People who were fighting with one another before and after Uthman, until Uthman comes and then abrogates everything and then puts his one Quran. Still, miracle happens. Different Arabic Qurans circulates around. So on the screen, you've got the kind of graph of different Arabic Qurans. And you have You have, for example, Hafs. Okay, Hafs is from Kufa, not even from like Mecca or Medina. Remember, in Kufa, they were reading still 150 years after Uthman's canonization. They are reading Ibn Masud's Quran, and that's the guy like they broke his hip. That guy had 90 students, 90. And why they wanted to reduce it to 2, they picked only 2 students. Warsh from Medina, I think Warsh was from Medina. Yes, Warsh is from Medina, and he's dated just late 700s, beginning 800s. He died in 812. He had 60 different students, but they picked only 2. So when you look at the Muslim tradition, Islamic tradition, you get to see they are talking about approximate 900 different Arabic Qurans are circulating around. Some of them are more famous than other ones, but there are different Arabic Qurans out there. But I think the practical bottom line is, I'll let Daughter of Christ to kind of see a couple of comments or questions if there is in the chat. But the bottom line practically is, it is the right recitation of the Quran is going to, the Quran you recite out of these many Qurans is going to intercede for you on the day of judgment for those who did the correct recitation. Hafs, who has been identified as someone who steals and who lies, if that guy's Quran is not the right recitation, then I am afraid to tell you on the day of judgment you messed up. Those Qurans, the ones you are reciting, is not going to turn up in the shape of the bird or in the shape of pale man to argue with Allah and appeal to Allah for your eternity. Yes, there are seriousity of it, that where Muslim missionaries are intentionally lying all humanity, that there are different Arabic, there is one perfect Quran. But beside that lie, there is something serious links with your eternity. Right recitation is the one which is going to take you to Islamic paradise. And so far, you don't have that. You don't even know what is that. That is identified as very much miracle of Islam. That is identified very much miracle of Islam. But on the other hand, of course, we do hold eternal word of God, who comes and dwells among us, who comes and puts his stand. And that eternal word of God is interceding and continue to intercede for those who love him, for those who accept his identity. But so far, the eternal word of Allah, which didn't even bother to do anything for humanity, turned up as a book, eaten by sheep, contains holes in the narratives. When you talk about it, screaming out as problems alongside of mess. That eternal word of Allah is not gonna help anyone, sadly.
Allah Praise asking, so Egyptians came up with the perfect Quran in 1924?
Yeah, Al-Azhar Uni, yeah. It's not, that was only for Al-Azhar, and then 1930s, it was for Egypt, 1980s, it was for whole world.
Okay,
but
yeah.
I think I would disagree on the they come up with one perfect Quran, because today we do have different version of Hafs Quran. So they try to come up, but they have not succeed.
Bob Connolly says, how can anyone say Arabic Quran's perfect or protected? Not only prove that there was not just one Mus'haf, but several different texts accepted as divine, despite errors. Is that a fair statement, that were all accepted as divine?
I think Abbas will respond to that, because you tell people actually there are problems, and still Muslim play the game of denial.
Abbas says the isnad, here's the isnad of the Quran. Okay, everyone listen. Allah to Gabriel, Gabriel to Muhammad, Muhammad to companions, companions to Abdurrahman al-Sulami, and then to Asim, and then to Hafs.
Wow.
What do you think, sister?
So who are those
That's the
companions? Give us the
Yeah.
name of the companions.
And since you
I
follow
already showed
Abdurrahman
that on the screen, by the way. He just picked up mine, but I think because there were a couple of names in the line, he couldn't write them. Who are
You
those
couldn't write them fast
companions?
enough.
Yeah, who are those companions who disagreed with one another?
And since you have Abdurrahman al-Sulami, Abbas, how come you don't recite what he used to recite? How come you don't have these ayahs in the Quran? Listen, how come you don't have them? اللهم إنا نستعينك ونستغفرك ونثني عليك الخير لا نكفرك ونؤمن بك ونخلع ونترك من يفجرك اللهم إياك نعبد ولك نصلي ونسجد. These verses, this Abdurrahman al-Sulami, Abbas, he used to recite in the Quran and teach them as the Quran. These verses are not in your Quran today. So what happened to them? They're called Dua al-Qunut. Google them. They used to be in his Quran. And he's a man in your isnad that you gave just to give to us.
It's not,
where are those verses, sister?
Yeah, it's not only that, sister. Also remember,
I said it in Arabic because I didn't want to say it in English and change the text of the Quran just in case a different Quran pops up. Go on, sister.
Sorry, I forgot my point.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault. It's like I'm getting old. You would expect people as they get old get wiser, but that's not working with me.
Where is those verses that the Abdurrahman al-Sulami used to recite, Abbas? Where are they in the Quran today? Where are they? He was in your isnad. He was in your chain that you just gave us. I'm sorry. It says Jesus is my Lord, says daughter of Christ. Abbas don't speak Arabic. He uses Google Translate. Well, he should speak Arabic because his Quran is in Arabic. And I remember him saying once he knows 15% Arabic. So maybe he could use that 15% to work out the missing verses from Al-Sulami's Quran that are not in the Quran today.
Yes, Ubay bin Ka'b disagreed with Zayd, and they disagreed with Ibn Masud. They all disagreed with one another, but they are in the same chain for the Hafs Quran. By the way, Hafs' teacher is in the 7 reading. Not Hafs. Hafs is like riwayat of that, kind of someone who gives birth to that. I put on the screen two chapters of Ubay bin Ka'b's Quran, and last time when I checked, they were not in the Quran. I don't know if they kind of end up in today's Quran, but last time when I checked, that was like, I think after lunchtime today, it wasn't there. Probably someone is trying to put them together. And if other thing is, if you've got those companions who are just in the chain of Hafs, why some companions has hip broken? Why still in Kufa they are reciting like other companions' Quran?
It just shows a lot of ignorance when someone says from Muhammad to the companions and then to us. It's like there's so many of these companions and they all disagreed. It just shows us that you don't know which companion said what, and general lack of ignorance. We need names if you're going to give us a chain of narration. And you gave one name, which I already showed you, that he recited a different Quran.
No, we don't need names because Dr. Shady Nasser told us those names just like nothing.
Yeah, he said even Muhammad himself. some of his readings, if they are different from the main Ottoman Quran, they threw it away. They didn't include it.
Yeah, remember 563 verses are missing. Minimum of 563 verses of the Quran is missing. That's a lot of number, a lot of verse.
Okay.
Okay, I think if there is no questions, we can finish the live stream. Is there any other things on the chat, sister?
Again, it's the same nonsense that all the readings of the companions are the same, which is...
How can they be same? I just put on the screen the differences according to your Muslim Islamic teachings.
It's very frustrating. It's like talking to
just like
a broken record.
Just go and do wudu, clean that thing from your ear. It will help you. It will help you. Like, you don't need to be Einstein to come up those things. All you've got to do is ask the individuals who were sitting in Yasin Dutan's lecture. Ask them to explain it to you. They were sitting there. They knew about those lies, and then they still continue to lie. Just ask them. There is nothing wrong if you don't know. You ask. There are lots of things I don't know. I ask people to explain it to me. Or advise me book for me to read it. Those are good things. Those are really, really good things. All you've got to do is get the references. Read your own sources. Your most reliable sources. And anyway, so that was actually, I can't remember how long Islam Critics video was, over an hour. So we just watched the 7 minutes of that clip. And then what we will do is, we will look at, we will pick this up again and then continue with that, because it will help us to think through some of the arguments we can use against Islam, in the intention, as I expressed, in the intention that Muslims give up Islam and walk through the bridge which Lord Jesus Christ is already built for them. That's the kind of purpose of all. That's the purpose of all. Hopefully you got some arguments, and you've got some kind of things that sticks with you. And remember, Yasin Dutan expresses view of Shady Nasser as fitna. I did put the clip on that where someone is saying, oh yeah, Shady Nasser's book is coming out talking about this, and then he was simply says like, oh no, don't tell anyone, just keep it to yourself. I'm paraphrasing, just like that's
again it's the hush game. It's not going to work for very long in the time that we live in, sister.
Yep, you try to continue to hide the information, but those things are going out through Sheikh Google, through YouTube, through Islam Critics YouTube channel, or through other YouTube channel. It is going out, or simply Muslim missionaries are by accidentally verbalizing those things. Remember, they are trying to save the face for a couple of months now. And how do they save the face? They give you death threats, they deplatform you and all other things, and then they will save Islam. Allah couldn't save Islam. Muhammad couldn't save Islam. Uthman comes and abrogates that Islam. 21st century missionaries are gonna save that Islam. We are longing to see that. Actually, no, I'm not longing to see that. I'm just longing Islam to Muslims to give up Islam. That's what I'm longing, and those Muslims to come and worship the eternal Son of God, who loves them enough to give himself for them.
Amen. And I see that things are moving quite fast, like I say, in the times we're living in. Since the Holes in the Narrative thing came out, things are moving very, very fast. Information is getting out there quite quickly, and I'm very, very grateful and excited.
Sheikh YouTube and Sheikh Google is doing good job.
Yeah. And so, our brothers and sisters who share and spread this please. Thank you.
And thank you, Daughter of Christ, for helping us to think through these hidden stories, as well as thank you very much everyone who joined us in the chat. And then of course thank you to Islam Critic for interviewing Shady Nasser, so that we can have more arguments to expose the beauty of Islam. That's the purpose of all. That's the purpose of all. And we get to see still Muslims are living in this beautiful bubble. That bubble is going to be shake up very soon. And yes, we will see you tomorrow in a live stream. If that doesn't happen, we will see you in the bosom of the Father. Beloved ones, may our risen, crucified and risen Lord silent you with his love. Dear Muslim friends, repent and come to Lord Jesus Christ, who gives you eternal life. God bless you all.